Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Four-time Grammy nominee Stanley Jordan just played a special Jimi Hendrix tribute at Strathmore. We spoke about Hendrix's legacy, Jordan's own unique playing style, and even recording the startup music for Apple computers.
Oh, thanks, Jason. I'm happy to be talking to you. This has been a show I've been doing frequently, at least I was till COVID hit. The idea is it's not just a standard tribute because I'm imagining that Jimi is alive today. And so this is my fantasy Jimi Hendrix concert if he were still playing today.
Wow. So what does a fantasy Jimi Hendrix concert entail?
We do some things that I had never heard Jimi do, but I feel that he was going in that direction. For example, some of his late recordings, like some of the jams that surfaced later, he was getting into some sort of interesting kind of Middle Eastern scales, and he was getting more of a jazz influence and things like that. So I follow up on some of the things that I think were coming up in his music. We do some of the songs everyone knows, like Foxy Lady. Of course, we do that. And we also do some of the more obscure things like 1983, A Merman I Shall Turn to Be. And we just do some jamming, but we do some jamming in the style of Jimi. And, one of the things that was great about that time, and a time that he really largely defined, was that it was very free form and free spirit, and so spontaneous things would happen. So it's the same thing with our show. We don't always know what's going to happen, but we just go with the flow.
So when did your obsession with Jimi Hendrix begin? I mean, following him, obviously before his untimely death, he left us way too young at 27, but memories of when you first heard him and said, wow.
Yeah, he did leave us too young. The whole time from the moment he picked up the guitar to the day he died was only 10 years. It's just amazing how much he did in such a short time. And I first really got into his music before I played guitar because I was a piano player. And I saw the news that Jimi had died, and I was really touched by that. And I was already wanting to get into blues and getting into rock, and I wanted to play guitar. So I decided in that moment that I'm going to play guitar because I want to follow up on some of the things that Jimi did. So even though I've got my own career and I've gone in my own direction, Jimi was really the inspiration for me to even start playing guitar in the first place.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you were born in Chicago in 59, but so like you said, you learned piano first at age 6 and then guitar at 11. So I didn't realize that. So you heard Jimi and that's the reason you picked up guitar.
Yeah, I mean, I had wanted to play. It was kind of in the back of my mind, and that was the moment. So even though I've done my own thing, I would say that a lot of what my career on guitar has been is following up on things that I thought Jimi was developing. And so I feel like this show is just really natural for me. Because I've been mostly known as a jazz guitarist, it might surprise some people.
You sort of mentioned when you first started playing guitar, but take me into when you started pursuing it, more as from college on. So I know you studied music theory and different things at Princeton. Is it true when you were there, you played with Dizzy Gillespie, Benny Carter, you met some titans?
Oh, yeah. So Benny Carter did a semester. He taught a course at Princeton. It was a combination of the music department and the American Studies program that had to do with the history of jazz. And so I met him because I took that course. And I got an opportunity to perform with him because he did a concert at Princeton and he invited some heavyweight musicians, including Dizzy Gillespie. And they brought me upstage to play, and I thought that it would be difficult. I thought it would be intimidating, but I was surprised because once I hit the stage with them, I just felt so natural and so comfortable, and I felt like, yes, this is what I want to do. So that was an early memory of realizing that maybe I had the potential to, do this for real.
Fantastic. And then how did you get signed by Blue Note Records? I guess it was like 85 to do that album Magic Touch with, it was number one on Billboard Jazz for like 51 weeks or something crazy. How did that record deal come about?
Well, I had met Bruce Lundvall, who was not yet at Blue Note Records. He was at a different label. And we met, and he wanted to work with me already, but I wasn't ready. And then one day I went in there and I said, okay, what do we do? What's the next step? I want to get started. And he said, well, before we talk, I got to tell you, I don't work here anymore. I just got a call last night from the chairman of Capital Industries. They want me to revive Blue Note Records, and they want to have a major pop label presence on the East Coast, and they want me to head the whole thing, and I want you to be the first artist I sign. So give me some time to get this off the ground, and we'll do it. So it was just an amazing thing, because some people were telling me at the time that I shouldn't wait. This is a great opportunity. I should go for it. And then I said, but I'm not ready. I'm not ready. So fortunately, I did wait. And, you just never know how things work out. But I do believe that if you do the right thing, then things have a tendency to fall into place. So it was just one of those magical things.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like it all paid off. The waiting panned out.
Yeah.
Everybody, anyone who's watched you or followed your career, there's a lot of talk of, how your unique playing style, how you tap your fingers on the fret with both hands. How did that come to you? Like, how did you start doing that?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people know, Van Halen for that, and another artist we lost way too soon. So phenomenally talented. But the thing is, Jimmy was already doing some of those things. He was already implying that. For example, if you look on his 1968 live Monterey pop version of Foxy Lady, there's times where he's got his right hand up in the air and his left hand's playing lines with one hand. And I remember seeing that and thinking, wow, that's interesting that you could play a guitar with just one hand. I wonder what you could do if you had two hands, doing different things. The other thing is there were times when he would do stuff like he would tap the strings up high in the neck with his pick and all kinds of other stuff like that. So I actually originally got the idea really from watching Jimmy. I just sort of expanded on some things that he was doing.
Nice. Well, you're carrying on the legacy there at that. Well, you are a accomplished guy in your own right. Yeah, we're talking Jimmy and you're paying tribute, but you've earned 4 Grammy nods yourself, sir. So remind our listeners what your 4 nominations came for.
So let's see. I have to think, because when I did my first album on Blue Note, I did get 2 Grammy nominations for that. I think one was for best instrumental solo on a pop song or something like that. And the other one, I don't remember, best new artist or something like that. And then I got one for my performance of my recording of Marvin Gaye's What's Going On my Cornucopia album. And there was another one, I can't remember that one right now. But the interesting thing is that even though most people know me as a jazz artist, most of my Grammy nominations have actually been in the pop category. So, it's all labels. We sometimes struggle with what to call this and what to call that.
Right.
But the main thing is that I've always had broad interests in a lot of different kinds of music. And in the beginning, it was a little bit challenging because the industry was set up for, artists who do just one thing. And so I kind of had to stubbornly insist that I'm doing whatever I feel like doing. And I think over time, the industry has kind of made way for me, sort of maybe grudgingly at first. But now it's not such a big deal. Younger artists, people coming up now, everyone understands that people have a lot of different influences and they have diverse interests. And so I like to think that I helped to sort of open that door. Because nowadays we grow up, there's so much media, there's so much influence. The old sort of, folk tale of the artist from a small town playing some local music, it's just doesn't happen as much as it used to.
Well, speaking of you having diverse interests, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you've always been into like computer music too, like even back studying some in college. And is it true you recorded the startup sound for some Macintosh computers?
Oh yeah, that's true. So in 1994, I went to Apple headquarters and I did a sort of a lunchtime concert pep talk for people because Apple was going through some tough times. And I said, keep it up. We love what you guys are doing. And then someone pulled me aside afterwards and said, hey, we'd like you to do a startup sound. We've got a whole new line of computers coming out. based on this high-speed processor. And computers are going to be doing different things now. They're not just going to be an office tool. People are going to be listening to music and watching movies. It's going to be a media appliance now. Well, nowadays it's no big deal, but that's when that started. And they said, we'd like you to do the startup sound. So I asked them a lot of questions about these new computers coming out, the Power Macs. And I took everything they told me and I embodied that in the sound and I created that sound. So the first Power Macs, like the 6100, the 8100, that line of computers has the startup sound that I made. It's got acoustic guitar, so it's got that natural sound to it. It's got this sort of a rock and roll attitude because it's got this minor chord. It's similar to the chord, with Yes, Roundabout, and there's a chord where he hits harmonics. It's similar to that chord. So it's got a little bit of a rock attitude. It comes on really quickly. It doesn't kind of ooze in, but it's like razor sharp. All those things embodied the stuff that they told me about this new line of computers. So I'm kind of proud of that, because when you start up that computer, that sound, that's the first thing that it does.
Yeah, so like when I turn I have a MacBook Pro nowadays, and it does that dun when you turn it on. So what was your sound?
Yeah, it's similar because it's got a sharp attack. It's like a bong, but it's mostly guitar. There's some synth in there in the bass, in the low part of it, but I combine 2 or 3 guitars where I'm hitting harmonics on the guitar. So it's bright and splashy, but it's clearly an acoustic guitar.
So that sound that I hear and that all our listeners hear when they turn on their Macs is sort of a remnant or a descendant of the sound that you made for those Macs in the early to mid 90s.
It's similar in some ways, but it's all synth. So it doesn't have that natural sound of the startup sound that I made. And I would love to hear them go back to something more like that. I already know if they ask me to do another one, I already know what it's going to be. So,
you've already got it crafted in your head of what it sounds like?
That first one was more of a sort of an E minor. This next one is going to be more of an F major. Yeah, I've already got it figured out.
All right, you hear that, Apple? Come calling. Stanley Jordan's ready. Wait, before I move on from that topic, did you actually get to meet Steve Jobs then?
No, I never met Steve Jobs. I think at that time, I'm not even sure. I think this was during the time that Steve wasn't at Apple.
Right, they made him leave and then he came back. Yeah,
he came back, and the rest is history.
Well, you filled in that gap for them. Cool. Well, I mean, you've, thanks for your time. Before we let you run, I mean, you've worked with some huge artists and collaborated. I mean, Quincy Jones and Dave Matthews, a bunch of people. Was there a particular highlight for you working with like a Quincy must have been like a dream come true?
Well, the thing with Quincy, happened actually when I was pretty young because I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area. And they put an all-star band together of high school musicians in the county. And we all got a chance to perform with Quincy. So I think I was like 16 at the time. And I ended up doing some major solos during that concert. And, years later, he remembered me and so forth. So it was really an honor getting to play with him at such a young age. So that was a highlight. I would say another highlight was the song that I did with Kenny Rogers. Morning Desire. He was just such a sweet guy and just so talented and what a storyteller. And that was in 1986. That was the #1 country song of the year. And the producer was George Martin, who was the producer of the Beatles, and he was so great to work with. And I had an idea that involved a little bit of extra time. And I said, is it okay if I work on this? And he said, sure. So he was out shooting basketball hoops while I worked out this idea. And I ended up having this major solo on the end of the song. And the theme of the song is he doesn't want to go to work. He just wants to stay at home with his lover and enjoy listening to the rain. So the way I think of it is I was the rain in that song.
Wow. What was the title of the song again?
It's called Morning Desire.
Morning Desire. Man, rest in peace, Kenny Rogers, one of the true legends. Crossover from country pop. He could do even that early stuff. What was it in? Just dropped in to see what my condition was in. He could do it all.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
All right, cool. One final thing of your other pop culture stuff. You've done some stuff for the screen. I know you did a cameo in Blake Edwards' Blind Date. You did the score for Daddy's Girl, the ABC special. And then I know people probably saw you perform on late night a lot too. Like, how cool is it performing, with Johnny Carson or David Letterman watching you?
Oh yes, I did a lot of TV. I did the Johnny Carson show. I did the Tonight Show with Jay Leno and also with Jimmy Fallon. I've been on Letterman several times and a lot of other shows, David Brenner, and when it was Regis and Kathy, I did their show. And I just really enjoy doing TV. It's a little bit on the edge because things work quickly, it's fast paced. I remember there was one time when I did, this was when Johnny was hosting, and we did Stairway to Heaven. And it was like 10 seconds before the curtain. And my tech was having trouble getting the equipment to work. And he was sweating bullets. He couldn't get the sound to work. And the stage manager was counting down 10, 9, 8. And he saw what was going on. And he said, fade to commercial. And I said, no, it's okay. And he said, okay, don't fade to commercial. And then at the count of like 4, the tech finally got the rig to work, and they opened the curtain and we played the song. So I had a lot of faith in my tech, and he came through for me. That was one of those moments when you take a chance.
Yeah, that's a close call.
Yeah, it was definitely a close call.
Hey, thanks so much for doing this. I'll think of you every time I turn on my Mac now.
Thanks. And yeah, someone put in a word for me. It's time for a new Stanley sound.
Yeah, let's go back to go back to what that original, more of a guitar, not a synth sound. Except I know you got a new idea of how you can even update it. I can't wait to hear. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.